Hi guys, today I'm gonna review The Tiger's Watch by Julia Ember. I received this book through Netgalley in exchange for an honest review, and this comes out August 22nd. The Tiger's Watch is the first book in a YA fantasy trilogy, and I also think it's kind of important to mention that this only has 180 pages. I think there's nothing worse than going into a fantasy book expecting it to be like 400 pages and then having only half of it. I personally knew it was that short, but I feel like it's always good to mention. Now I'm gonna have a little bit of a hard time telling you the synopsis of The Tiger's Watch because there were definitely certain things about the world that I didn't quite understand. I am gonna get to that later, obviously, because that's already the review part, but that's why I have a little bit of a hard time talking about what I personally find important as far as the plot goes and as far as the world goes. But I think kind of the central point is that the main character Tashi is a spy and they have trained their whole life to become an inhabitor, which means that they are bonded with an animal and they have like a very special connection, which is another thing. I don't want to go into detail at all because that was an aspect that I really enjoyed about the story, so I don't want to say too much about that bond. But they are connected all the time and they can see from each other's perspectives and they can feel each other's emotions, which is all I'm gonna say about that. Tashi has to flee to a remote monastery after a brutal siege, and the monastery then actually gets turned into a hospital by that opposing army. Tashi has to become a kind of servant for the commander of this army, and the story kind of goes from there. Now, first off, I want to mention that Tashi is gender fluid, and I personally am a cisgender woman, so I can't really say much about the representation in this one, and if I find Own Voices reviews, I will definitely leave them in the description down below. But what I do want to mention is two things that I really noticed in particular that I think were done well as far as I could tell. The first thing is that in the first 5%, it was already mentioned that Tashi is gender fluid, and I think especially in fantasy it doesn't happen a lot that this gets mentioned because authors think they can't mention labels or descriptions as we know them in fantasy worlds. And while gender fluid is never mentioned, Tashi immediately says that they have never felt comfortable with, you know, the binary and fitting into one gender, and I really like that it was mentioned right away, and also that Tashi already was like 100% comfortable with who they were. There was not, you know, any discussion about it. That is just who Tashi is, and that's kind of how we go into this novel. And obviously Tashi meets a lot of people that, you know, they are not really friendly with, and what I really enjoyed is that even if it was like an enemy or someone from the opposing side, as soon as it was cleared up that, you know, Tashi uses they them pronouns, this was always respected. And I think that's really important, that none of their enemies ever use this to kind of make fun of Tashi or just be annoying about it and use it as a weapon against them or something. And I just think that's really, really important, and I feel like that is hopefully good representation. But as I said, please always seek out Own Voices reviews, as I am cisgender and I can't really judge it. I just think these are two things that I personally noticed and that I think are well done, but obviously I can't really speak for this marginalized group. I think what I personally liked most about this novel was just the relationship between the inhabitor and the animal. And as I said, I don't want to say much about it because I really don't want to give anything away, because I feel like it's a really great experience to read about it and I don't want to say too much. But I think that this concept, which obviously has been done before by lots of people, was something that Julia Ember was able to write really, really well. And I think that she put her own take to it and it doesn't feel like a copy of something else, but she really just created something special with that, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the novel. Also, I think in general all of the characters are really, really interesting to read about. There's just so much to learn about these characters, and I think there was just not really enough space to even go into more detail, but I think overall all of the characters were really interesting. Also, Tashi as a main character was very intriguing and it was really great to read from their perspective. I also liked that even though it wasn't really the focus of the story, there were certain times where the gender fluidity was kind of mentioned, and it was mentioned that, you know, there were some mornings where Tashi really felt like they wanted to put on lipstick and really just, you know, have like really nice flowy hair and wear a dress, and other times where they kind of just wanted to be like more masculine. And I just really enjoyed that these were like little aspects that were kind of woven into the story, but were never the focus of it. There's also some romance in the story, and it is a slight love triangle, but not really. It's rather just there's one character that Tashi really has like romantic feelings for, and there's another character that they kind of have more like physical attraction and even sexual desire for. So I don't know, this could potentially develop into a love triangle in the sequels. But as I said, I think the world building was lacking a little bit, and I think that in general the concept of the world is very intriguing, but I just think that it was also very complex and complicated, and I don't think that there was enough space to explain that whole world in just 180 pages. As I said, it just kind of confused me sometimes. I really wish we got a little bit more of the history of what happened before and how it all came to be, and I think it was just kind of hard for me to understand where kind of Tashi stands and where the army stands and why there is a fight exactly. There were just certain aspects that I never quite understood about it. Maybe I didn't pay attention. You never know with me, I'm gonna be honest. But I definitely think that there were some things that were just really unclear, and some questions unanswered might be done in the sequel. So I think and hope that there's gonna be some more world building and some more history in the sequel, but I think there already should have been a little bit more in this first installment to just make the world a little bit more clear. Overall, I did really enjoy this book, and I think that I definitely want to read the sequel as soon as it comes out. The world building, even though it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be in this first one, has a lot of potential, and I am really hoping that there's going to be more on that in the sequels. And I also did kind of fall in love with the characters. I think they are really interesting, and that it's a really nice combination. And also the ending, I felt like it wasn't exactly a cliffhanger, but it was definitely kind of open, and you definitely want to know what happens next, and you're definitely a little bit on the edge of your seat at the end of the novel, and I really enjoyed that. And I would definitely overall recommend this book and think you should definitely pre-order it if you're interested. And yeah, these were all of my thoughts on The Tiger's Watch by Julia Ember. Please let me know any thoughts you have on this in the comments down below. Do you want to read it? Have you heard of this before and were maybe already excited about this, or are you just now adding it to your wish list? And also, if you are stumbling upon this review and you are maybe someone who is gender fluid and has read the book as well, please let me know your thoughts. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!